A medium-sized evergreen in most garden situations shrub option, which can be used to offset that dormant look of some of the salvias, brittle bush sunflowers, and will be blooming throughout much of the summer into early fall, is California buckwheat. Now, California buckwheat may or may not be your cup of tea depending on the look you're looking for your landscape, but I love it. Here in our park, this area has extremely rocky soil. We water it once every 3 weeks. Our summer dormant plants do go quite dormant in this situation, and buckwheat keeps on kicking out the flowers. Here we are in the first week of October, and it is starting to slow down for the season. And you can see these flowers fade from the white with sometimes a little bit of a pink in them to this sort of dry, rusty color. And why I said it might not be everybody's aesthetic cup of tea is because people will react differently to these dry, kind of rusty looking flowers. I and many other gardeners think that that is quite beautiful, and the contrast between the fresh flowers and the dried ones is just part of the look. Later on in the season, when it is mostly accented by the dried flowers, I think that is quite beautiful. However, some gardeners who are just coming into native plants and coming from sort of a more conventional aesthetic sometimes think that those dried flowers have a dried out look that's unattractive. If that's the case, you're not going to want to try to deadhead this plant and remove those dried flowers, because that would create a ton of work. With California buckwheat, you just roll with the seasons, but you appreciate the fact that with watering, like we recommend for most native gardens, every 3 to 4 weeks, in the vast majority of situations, the little leaves on this plant stay quite green, and it flowers throughout much of the summer, providing both the habitat value and the visual aesthetic to offset those dormant season plants. This is a number of plants of California buckwheat growing together, but California buckwheat can grow quite large. Individual plants will often grow much larger than you might read in resources depending on the situation. It wouldn't be uncommon in our hot inland area for an individual California buckwheat plant to grow after many years, if completely unpruned, to 8 feet wide, maybe 10 feet wide, occasionally wider. The good news is that it's very easy to prune, and you can just cut it, shape it however you want. It does a really good job growing back from even cuts into older wood. So do what you need to do to keep its growth in check if you want to grow it. However, if it has plenty of room to spread, you can just let it do its thing. No pruning at all needed on this. The height of the species can be variable just depending on the genetic stock of the nursery and where it's growing. We've had it grow anywhere from between like 2.5, 3 feet tall after many years to being more in the like 4.5 foot range. It really depends, but you can prune as needed. There are extra low ground cover cultivars available, many of which will get sort of extra wide, 10 feet up to maybe 12 feet wide, but will stay quite a bit lower, 1.5 foot tall to 3 feet tall, depending on that cultivar. If you grow it without any water at all though, it will go summer dormant, will look quite dry, and will bloom for much less of the summer. But if you give it that occasional deep soak, it's going to be an all-star performer in the vast majority of gardens.